Tonight, a shocking and deeply personal revelation from one of reality television's most recognizable faces. A woman millions of Americans have watched battle obesity, addiction, near-death medical crises, and the emotional weight of public scrutiny is now speaking out about something far less visible and potentially far more dangerous. In a candid disclosure, 1,000-pound Sisters star Tammy Slaton says a medication mix-up triggered what she describes as manic depression, sending her into a psychological spiral that didn't just affect her health, it fractured her family. For years, viewers have watched Tammy fight for survival. But this time, the battle wasn't against the scale. It wasn't against food addiction. It wasn't against mobility or oxygen tanks. According to her own account, it was against a chemical imbalance inside her body, one she believes was intensified by an error involving her prescribed medication. What exactly happened? Was this a clinical mismanagement issue? A misunderstanding about dosage? A complication linked to pre-existing mental health conditions? And perhaps most importantly, how did this medical disruption deepen the long-running tensions within the Slaton family? Tonight, we're going beyond the headlines, beyond the viral clips, beyond the tabloid summaries. We're examining what this means for Tammy's mental health, her recovery journey, her strained relationships, and the broader conversation about medication safety in America, especially for patients navigating complex medical histories under the glare of reality television fame. Stay with us, because this isn't just about a reality star. It's about mental health, family fractures, and what happens when treatment meant to heal instead spirals into something far more complicated. Background and context. To understand the gravity of Tammy Slaton's revelation, we have to understand the road that led here. Tammy first entered the national spotlight in 2020 when TLC premiered 1,000-Pound Sisters, a docu-reality program chronicling the lives of Tammy and her sister Amy Slaton as they attempted to lose weight and qualify for bariatric surgery. The premise was straightforward. Two Kentucky sisters battling morbid obesity while navigating family life, relationships, and lifelong trauma. But what unfolded over the seasons was far more layered. Tammy's weight at one point exceeded 700 pounds. She faced life-threatening complications, including respiratory distress that required oxygen support and, later, a medically induced coma following a severe health crisis in 2021. She was placed in rehabilitation facilities multiple times, with mixed results. Her journey was often marked by resistance to treatment, emotional volatility, and explosive family confrontations that became defining moments of the series. Viewers saw Tammy clash frequently with Amy and other siblings, including Chris Combs and Amanda Halterman. At times, her family accused her of self-sabotage. At other times, they expressed exhaustion from what they described as cycles of crisis and regression. Yet in 2022, something shifted. After entering a long-term rehabilitation program in Ohio, Tammy began showing measurable progress. She eventually underwent bariatric surgery, a milestone many doubted she would reach. In 2023, she celebrated dramatic weight loss, shedding hundreds of pounds and regaining mobility. But as physical transformation dominated headlines, a quieter struggle continued beneath the surface: mental health. Tammy has spoken publicly in past seasons about depression, trauma, and emotional eating. While she is not a licensed medical professional and has not publicly detailed every aspect of her psychiatric history, she has acknowledged struggling with depression for years. Mental health professionals note that individuals experiencing severe obesity and public scrutiny often face compounded emotional strain, something Tammy's story exemplifies. So when she recently revealed that a medication mix-up triggered what she called manic depression, fans immediately took notice. The term manic depression is an older phrase historically used to describe bipolar disorder, though it is sometimes used colloquially to describe extreme mood swings. Tammy has not publicly confirmed a formal bipolar diagnosis, and it's important to note that without verified medical documentation, we rely only on her own description of events. According to Tammy, the medication error led to severe mood destabilization. She described emotional volatility, deep depressive episodes, and behavior that she now believes contributed to worsening tensions within her family. And that brings us to the rift. Because while Tammy was physically transforming, her relationships, especially with her sister Amy, were reportedly under strain, breaking details. In recent interviews and televised updates tied to 1,000-pound sisters, Tammy opened up about the medication issue. She indicated that her prescriptions were either mismanaged or incorrectly adjusted, leading to psychological side effects she did not immediately recognize. Tammy has not publicly accused a specific physician of wrongdoing, nor has there been any confirmed legal filing. She has not released medical records. Therefore, we must rely on her account and publicly available statements. According to her description, the medication change led to a period of emotional instability characterized by heightened agitation, depressive crashes, and interpersonal conflict. Mental health experts note that certain psychiatric medications, particularly mood stabilizers, antidepressants, or antipsychotics, can produce adverse reactions if dosages are changed abruptly, combined improperly, or discontinued without supervision. Again, no independent medical review has confirmed what occurred in Tammy's case, but she maintains that the shift significantly altered her emotional state. Family members reportedly noticed behavioral changes. Viewers of recent episodes saw increased tension between Tammy and her siblings. Conversations became sharper. Arguments escalated faster. Long-standing resentments resurfaced. At one point, reports and on-screen interactions suggested that communication between Tammy and Amy had deteriorated to the point of estrangement. For a family whose brand is built on unity amid chaos, that fracture was notable. Tammy now says she is actively working to repair those relationships. She has expressed remorse for some of her actions during what she describes as the medication-triggered spiral. Importantly, there has been no confirmed statement from TLC alleging production interference in her medication management. The network has not publicly commented on the specifics of Tammy's claim, nor has any regulatory body announced an investigation. What we have is Tammy's lived experience, shared publicly, and a family attempting reconciliation in real time. Expert analysis. Let's break this down through several lenses. From a legal standpoint, medication errors can fall into various categories: prescribing errors, dispensing errors, dosage miscalculations, or adverse reactions not properly monitored. However, establishing medical malpractice requires evidence of negligence, deviation from standard care, and demonstrable harm. At this stage, no such claim has been formally alleged in Tammy's case. From a psychiatric perspective, medication adjustments must be handled cautiously, especially in patients with complex health histories. Experts emphasize that abrupt changes to antidepressants or mood stabilizers can, in some cases, lead to mood destabilization, including increased depression, agitation, or manic-like symptoms. From a financial and professional angle, Tammy's public disclosure could affect the brand dynamics of 1,000-pound sisters. Reality programming thrives on authenticity, but it also faces ethical scrutiny when cast members' mental health becomes a storyline. Networks must balance compelling television with responsible care. Publicly, Tammy's transformation has been widely praised. But mental health setbacks complicate the redemption narrative many viewers celebrated. And culturally, her admission touches a nerve in America. According to the CDC, millions of Americans take psychiatric medications. Medication management errors are not uncommon nationwide. Tammy's story, regardless of its specifics, highlights the fragility of chemical balance and the importance of careful medical oversight. Social media explosion. Online reaction has been intense. On platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and X, fans are divided. Some express deep empathy, arguing that Tammy has endured unimaginable stress under public scrutiny and deserves grace. Others question the framing of a mix-up, asking whether the issue involved miscommunication rather than clinical error. Mental health advocates have entered the conversation, reminding viewers that medication journeys are rarely linear. They stress that stigma often prevents public figures from discussing psychiatric side effects openly, and Tammy's transparency could reduce shame for others. Meanwhile, Longtime fans note that family tension has always been central to the Slaton narrative. Some believe this is simply another chapter in a complicated sibling dynamic shaped by poverty, trauma, and codependency. What is clear? Americans are paying attention. What this means for the future. For Tammy personally, stabilization appears to be the priority. She has indicated that her medication regimen is now being properly managed. Continued therapy and psychiatric monitoring will likely play a role in her recovery. For her family, reconciliation may take time. Repairing trust after emotional volatility requires consistency, communication, and boundaries. For the show, this development could shift future storytelling. Audiences are increasingly sophisticated about mental health narratives. They expect nuance, not exploitation. For viewers at home, Tammy's experience underscores the importance of advocating for oneself in medical settings. Asking questions. Confirming dosages. Seeking second opinions when symptoms change dramatically. Emotional human angle. Strip away the cameras. Strip away the viral memes. At its core, this is a woman who nearly died multiple times, fought her way back to mobility, fell in love, lost her husband unexpectedly in 2023, and now finds herself navigating mental health turbulence while millions watch. That's not just reality TV. That's a human being trying to stabilize her life. When Tammy speaks about repairing her relationship with Amy, there's a vulnerability there that feels different from past seasons. Less defensive. More reflective. Siblings fight. Families fracture. But illness, physical or mental, often complicates accountability. When mood is chemically altered, behavior can spiral beyond intention. And for many American families watching, that part feels painfully familiar. Strong call to action. If this story resonates with you, if you've experienced medication side effects, family tension tied to mental health, or the difficult road of recovery, join the conversation respectfully below. Share your thoughts. Share your experiences. Keep it constructive. If you value in-depth reporting that goes beyond surface headlines and treats complex stories with nuance and care, consider subscribing. Because these are the conversations that matter, not just in Hollywood, but in households across America. And as Tammy Slaton works to rebuild her health and her family bonds, one thing is certain: the journey isn't over. Not even close. When a public figure says a medication mix-up triggered severe mood instability, it forces a difficult but necessary conversation, not just about personal accountability, but about systems. Tammy Slaton did not frame her experience as a lawsuit. She did not publicly accuse a specific doctor or facility of malpractice. What she described instead was confusion, a destabilizing shift, a period where, in her words, she did not feel like herself. And that distinction matters. Across the United States, medication adjustments are common, especially for patients managing complex health conditions. Tammy's medical history is extensive: severe obesity, respiratory complications, bariatric surgery recovery, grief trauma following the death of her husband Caleb Willingham, and long-documented struggles with depression. Each of those factors can complicate psychiatric care. Experts note that after major weight loss surgery, the body's absorption of medications can change. Bariatric procedures sometimes alter how drugs metabolize. That can require dosage recalibration. If not closely monitored, even small discrepancies can produce outsized psychological effects. Again, no independent review has confirmed that this was the mechanism in Tammy's case, but the possibility underscores why medication management for post-bariatric patients must be individualized and closely supervised. There is also the grief factor. Tammy's husband, Caleb, whom she met in rehabilitation and married in 2022, died in mid-2023. His passing was publicly acknowledged, and Tammy spoke about the emotional devastation that followed. Grief alone can trigger depressive episodes, irritability, or emotional withdrawal. When layered with medication adjustments, the line between circumstantial emotional distress and pharmacological side effects can blur. That ambiguity is what makes this story so compelling and so complicated. Was it chemistry? Was it grief? Was it stress from filming? Was it long-standing sibling tension reaching a boiling point? Or was it all of the above? Mental health professionals often emphasize that destabilization rarely has a single cause. It is usually cumulative. And in Tammy's case, the cumulative pressure was immense. The family rift, old wounds, new fractures. To understand why Tammy's recent admission carries such weight, we have to revisit the emotional architecture of the Slaton family. For years, viewers have seen cycles: intervention, resistance, emotional outburst, apology, reconciliation, then repetition. It became a rhythm of the show. Amy often positioned herself as both sister and caretaker. Chris emerged as a stabilizing but firm presence. Amanda frequently acted as a blunt truth-teller. Tammy, meanwhile, oscillated between vulnerability and defiance. That dynamic created powerful television. But it also revealed deep-rooted patterns. Family systems experts say that when one member struggles with chronic illness or addiction-like behaviors, including food addiction, other members can unconsciously adopt roles: the fixer, the enforcer, the mediator, the rescuer. Over time, those roles become rigid. Change disrupts them. Tammy's massive weight loss altered her role. For years, she was the sister in crisis. Suddenly, she was mobile, independent, more confident in public appearances, engaging with fans, taking ownership of her transformation. That shift can create friction, even if everyone wants success. Now add medication instability to that evolving dynamic. Tammy has acknowledged that during the period she describes as manic depression, she said and did things she regrets. Emotional volatility can amplify minor disagreements into major confrontations. Tone sharpens. Patience thins. Old resentments resurface. Viewers reportedly noticed a chill between Tammy and Amy in more recent appearances. Conversations seemed less playful, more guarded. Tammy now says she wants to repair that damage. But rebuilding trust in a family that has endured years of televised conflict requires more than stabilization. It requires sustained behavioral change, something she appears to be working toward. Reality television and mental health ethics. This story also raises a larger question. What responsibility do reality television networks have when cast members experience psychiatric distress? Reality TV occupies a strange cultural space. It markets authenticity, but it is structured by production schedules, editing, and narrative arcs. Cast members are not fictional characters. They are real people whose mental health can deteriorate under public scrutiny. Industry experts note that networks typically provide access to counseling resources. However, the depth and consistency of that support varies by production. There has been no public statement suggesting that filming caused Tammy's medication issue. No verified claim that production interfered in her care. But the broader conversation remains relevant. When mental health crises unfold on camera, they become content. That can both reduce stigma and risk sensationalism. Tammy's decision to frame this period as medication-related rather than purely behavioral shifts the narrative. It invites viewers to see instability not as personal failure, but as a medical complication. That reframing is powerful. Public reaction, empathy versus skepticism. The American public is increasingly literate in mental health terminology, but also increasingly skeptical of celebrity explanations. Online, some commenters express strong support. They cite their own experiences with antidepressants that required months of adjustment. Others share stories of being misdiagnosed or improperly tapered off medication. But skepticism is present too. Some argue that Tammy has historically struggled with accountability and question whether medication mix-up shifts blame away from personal choices. This divide reflects a broader national conversation about responsibility versus illness. Can both be true? Can someone be accountable for their actions while also acknowledging that medication destabilized their mood? Psychiatrists would say yes. Medication can lower impulse control, increase irritability, or deepen depressive thinking. But patients still bear responsibility for seeking help when they notice changes. The tension lies in timing, recognizing side effects before they spiral into relational damage. Tammy appears to be in the reflective phase now, looking backward, identifying triggers, and attempting repair. The grief layer, a widow at center stage. It is impossible to separate this chapter from Tammy's status as a widow. Caleb Willingham's death came less than a year after their wedding. Public grief under the microscope of reality television is uniquely painful. There is little privacy. Social media commentary can be brutal. Speculation thrives. Grief counselors explain that widowhood often produces mood swings that resemble bipolar cycling, intense sadness, anger, even bursts of restless energy. Add psychiatric medication into that mix, and symptom interpretation becomes complex. Tammy's body was changing rapidly due to weight loss. Her identity was shifting. Her marriage ended abruptly through tragedy. Her fame was expanding. That is an enormous psychological load for anyone, let alone someone with documented mental health challenges. When she describes feeling chemically off balance, it resonates with viewers who understand how fragile emotional stability can be during compounded stress. Financial and career implications. Tammy's transformation revitalized interest in the series. Weight loss milestones generated headlines beyond the TLC audience. Her social media following grew significantly. But reality TV careers are unpredictable. Audience sympathy fuels longevity. Public backlash can shorten it. By addressing the medication issue directly, Tammy may be preempting speculation. Transparency often strengthens audience connection. However, if family rifts persist publicly, that could alter the show's trajectory. Viewers are invested in sibling unity. Prolonged estrangement risks fatigue. From a business standpoint, authenticity is the currency. Tammy's willingness to discuss psychiatric instability carefully, without naming providers or making legal claims, may preserve that authenticity. What recovery looks like now. So what does stabilization mean going forward? Experts recommend several pillars for someone in Tammy's position. Consistent psychiatric monitoring with gradual dosage adjustments, rather than abrupt changes. Individual therapy focused on grief processing and boundary setting. Family counseling sessions to rebuild communication frameworks. Clear differentiation between reality show narrative tension and real-life emotional safety. Tammy has indicated she is actively working on self-improvement. While she has not publicly detailed every therapeutic step, her tone in recent interviews suggests greater self-awareness. Accountability language, phrases like, "I own my part," signals growth. Repair, however, is not instant. Families recovering from conflict often require months of consistent behavior before trust fully returns. Why this story matters beyond television. It would be easy to dismiss this as just another reality star headline. But zoom out. Millions of Americans rely on antidepressants, mood stabilizers, or anxiety medications. According to national health data, medication mismanagement, whether through miscommunication, dosage confusion, or pharmacy error, occurs more frequently than many realize. Tammy's platform brings visibility to a silent struggle. Her experience, whether primarily pharmacological, emotional, or situational, reminds viewers that mental health is biological, not just behavioral. And that when something feels off, it's critical to speak up quickly. Looking ahead, the coming months will be telling. Will Tammy and Amy reconcile fully on screen? Will the show address the medication topic in greater depth? Will Tammy continue her physical transformation journey while maintaining emotional stability? There are no confirmed storylines yet. No official announcements about production changes. Only a woman publicly navigating recovery in real time. And perhaps that is the most compelling element of all. For years, audiences watched Tammy fight to survive physically. Now, they are witnessing her fight for psychological equilibrium and relational repair. That battle may be less visible than oxygen tubes and hospital beds. But in many ways, it is more universal. Final thought. At its core, this story is not about blame. It is about fragility. It is about how quickly equilibrium can shift when medication, grief, stress, and family history collide. And it is about what happens next. Will reflection turn into sustained change? Will transparency strengthen bonds? Will accountability rebuild trust? Those answers will unfold over time. If you've ever experienced a medication adjustment that changed your personality overnight, if you've ever watched a family argument spiral and later realized mental health played a role, if you've ever tried to rebuild trust after saying things you regret, this story likely feels familiar. Join the discussion below with respect and empathy. Mental health conversations deserve nuance, not cruelty. And if you appreciate investigative reporting that treats reality television stories with depth rather than mockery, consider subscribing for continued coverage. Because sometimes, the most important stories aren't about scandal. There is a phase in major physical transformation that experts sometimes call the identity destabilization window. It doesn't make headlines. It doesn't trend on social media. But clinicians who work with post-bariatric patients know it well. When someone loses hundreds of pounds, the world reacts immediately. Compliments, attention, new opportunities, new expectations. But internally, the person is often still adjusting to a completely unfamiliar version of themselves. For Tammy Slaton, that identity shift happened in front of a national audience through 1,000-pound sisters. Her transformation was dramatic, visible, and widely celebrated. Headlines focused on before and after photos. Social media praised her resilience. Viewers who had once doubted her chances began calling her an inspiration. But psychological research suggests that rapid transformation can produce unexpected emotional turbulence. Long-held defense mechanisms fall away. Attention increases. Social dynamics change. And unresolved trauma, once numbed by survival mode, can surface with intensity. Tammy's disclosure about a medication mix-up arrives in that context. When she describes manic depression triggered by a change in prescriptions, she is describing a destabilization that came at a moment when her entire life structure was already shifting, physically, emotionally, socially. That timing matters. Because when multiple stressors converge, even small chemical changes can feel seismic. The medication maze in America. Across the United States, psychiatric medication management is complex. Patients often see primary care physicians, psychiatrists, specialists, and pharmacists, sometimes in different systems. Electronic medical records don't always communicate seamlessly. Refills are processed through pharmacies that may not have full access to psychiatric notes. Dosage changes can occur after brief consultations. Insurance formularies can require substitutions. None of this means error is inevitable. But it does mean oversight requires vigilance. Tammy has not publicly detailed the exact medication involved. She has not named a provider. She has not described whether the issue was dosage, interaction, or abrupt discontinuation. And there is no